Welcome to the Business of Apparel Podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you.
Welcome to the top 3 episodes of Unmarked Street from inception. Thank you for joining us on our journey to building your apparel brands.
Welcome back to the Business of Apparel Podcast. This week, I wanted to tap into the number 2 most consistent question that I get asked ever since starting Unmarked Street and the Business of Apparel: international versus domestic manufacturing for the apparel industry. So a lot of people, I think, are really wondering what are the differences and what are the pros and cons between manufacturing your goods overseas versus manufacturing them here in the United States. So the first part of this conversation that usually comes up is regarding cost. Now, people definitely understand that manufacturing overseas, especially in several of the different Asia regions, are going to give you a better product or unit cost. So where if you were developing something, let's say in Europe, like I've done a lot of development in Italy. So we're going to take like an Italy price and a USA price, which might be, let's say, somewhere around $15 for a specific product. That same product might only cost you $7 coming out of China or coming out of Vietnam. And so there are some advantages there. However, you do need to make sure that you're considering all of the additional fees that come at you when you are manufacturing and importing goods from an international manufacturer. So for example, I'm going to throw out the idea, something that I am very familiar with, creating a polyester cycling jersey, women's polyester cycling jersey. We're going to use that as an example. Now, when we assign customs codes and duty rates to that piece, we need to go to the U.S. Customs handbook that helps us define an HTS code to this garment. And the HTS code for a women's top that fully zips open and closed at the center front and is made of a man-made fiber. Those are all the details that go into assigning an HTS code. A garment of that type is going to cost a 30% duty rate coming from China to the United States. So again, you also need to know where your garment is coming from and where it's going to. So 32%. So take that, like, let's say, again, if you were manufacturing in Italy or the US, we were going to say it was $15. Let's say if you're manufacturing in China, that's going to be just a $7 piece, but you are also going to be taking 32% of that $7 and tacking it on top just for your customs and duty rates. So even though it sounds like it's a much lower price to develop your goods in China or an Asia region, because you are adding all of those customs fees to it, sometimes we find that the prices become very, very close compared to being able to manufacture domestically. And there are a few other international options that will give you a 0% duty rate. We have access to the CAFTA region, which is the Central America trade agreement that we are a part of here in the US. We also have NAFTA, which is the North American trade agreement. So if we were doing manufacturing in Canada, Mexico, or any of the Central America countries that are part of those agreements, we can apply a 0% duty rate to our goods, which helps it stay more local. And it prevents you from having to pay all of those customs fees that go on top of your unit cost from the factory. So that can be one thing that you really need to consider. If you don't understand how customs fees work according to the unit cost coming from your factory, a really good place to start is to ask your manufacturer, ask your factory rep if they can help you determine what your customs rates and your duty fees are going to be. They can probably also help you assign appropriate HTS codes so that your documentation when you're importing all of those garments is correct, which will be important for you. And so understanding that there are additional fees coming from working internationally can really help to level things out. And so it's yet another reason why sometimes manufacturing domestically, or even better, super locally, can be of advantage to you, because these fees also then become much lower or they go away. I've seen a couple of different clients where they're able to actually manufacture in the town where they live. And so instead of needing to pay any shipping fees, they get in their own company truck or their own company car. They go over, they pick up the goods, and then they take it to their own warehouse. When it comes to timing, this is definitely something that you need to consider if you're going to be shipping or manufacturing from overseas. So, for example, if you are going to pay the most amount that you can in shipping, you can air ship your goods, and we typically allow for about a week. So let's say that you have your FOB price, your factory is getting it to the nearest airport for you. It's getting ready to get on a plane. From that X factory date, so it's exiting your factory, we typically put about a week in our calendars to plan for air shipping. And so that gets it to our warehouse in about a week. But it is going to be usually quite a bit more expensive to ship via air. The alternative, if you're shipping internationally, is to ship by boat. And so that will typically run you about 45 days. Sometimes it's faster, but to be safe, I always recommend that my clients put 45 days in their calendar if they are planning to ship by boat. Now, you can save quite a bit of money by shipping by boat over shipping by air, but it is going to cost you more in time. And so if you don't have that extra 45 days built into your calendar and you haven't checked all the boxes and approved everything when you needed to, that 45 days could be something that is going to break your business. And I've seen that happen more often than not, where there is a delivery date, there's a launch date that we need to hit, and all of a sudden that window that we were planning for to ship by boat is closing and it's becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so we end up having to pay the extra money to ship by air. So this is yet another case why putting a very healthy calendar and timeline against your brand can really help save you money. And the third key topic that I really talk about with people when they're asking me about international versus domestic shipping is regarding quality. And I think there are a lot of different instances out there where people are getting information that quality by manufacturing internationally can be a lower standard. And I am here to just totally debunk that. That is absolutely not true. I'm here to say that I have worked with some of the most amazing, best manufacturers that I've worked with in my entire career out of China. And so any rumors that you are actually hearing about all China goods being made of poor quality is not true. You can absolutely find great manufacturing partners and high quality factories in any region. It's just going to take a great connection of someone who has worked there before. It's also going to take some research to make sure that you're finding the right places. On the flip side of that, a lot of people really believe that made in USA means high quality. And while I do believe that that is absolutely true, there are opposite ends of the scale in every single region. So it is not guaranteed that if you are manufacturing in the US that you are going to get the highest quality sewing or the highest quality product. It is up to you to make sure that you have an ability to quality check your garments and make sure that whatever factory you choose, whether it's international or domestic, is hitting those standards for you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I am so excited to have with me Evgenia Yushkova, who is better known simply as Ye in the industry. Welcome to the podcast, Ye.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to chat with you today. I think Ye and I got on a call not too long ago, and we were just talking about the similarities between her business and Unmarked Street and what we're out there trying to do with our clients and our customers. And so this felt like a really great synergy to bring her on today and just kind of chat through almost exactly what we were talking about the other day. And so before we get too much into any of these questions and our conversation, Ye, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about your background, what you've been doing in the industry, and how it got you to where you are today.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So, really excited to be on this wonderful podcast. I've been an active listener myself, so really excited to be part of it. And so a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. This fashion is really, truly my passion since I was 4. So I've dedicated my whole life and career to this industry, working from bottom up, from the manufacturing brands, building successful brands for wholesale as well as retail, and kind of shifting into solo entrepreneurship back in 2011, being as a solo entrepreneur and pioneer of convertible clothing trend and brand overall. So, built a company here, then we expanded it actually into Asia. Because that was a better market for us to really introduce that particular trend. I was really more ready for it, the market at that moment. So we've moved the create affiliate company there. I was the only foreign designer that was allowed in the Philippine Fashion Weeks
Wow.
because it's really closed in for only Filipino designers. And it was really fantastic experience for several years. Moved myself there because I'm a big believer in domestic manufacturing. So where the business is, I really strongly believe of supporting the economy and kind of helping revamp some of the skills that were lost in the Philippines in terms of the craftsmanship.
Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course.
So 4 years kind of fast forward, learned a lot, made lots of mistakes because as
Yes.
a solo entrepreneur, it's a very different shift dynamic from going from a big budget of big companies and corporations to working on a very tiny lean budget, kind of trying self-fund it, trying to build a brand from ground up. Completely different dynamic. So made lots of mistakes, lost lots of thousands of dollars at the beginning because I applied all the strategies that always worked.
Right.
When you work for the big brands. But then I had to take a step back. And when I took a step back, I really had to reevaluate the consecutive way of taking those steps to be able to truly preserve the little budget that we had to start.
Yeah.
And build myself a roadmap that I personally have followed. And 4 years later, we sold the business with positive ROI and moved back. I moved back to the States. And ever since, I've dedicated myself to really helping small to mid-sized companies, entrepreneurs to start up and bring the vision to life. Focusing on building product that is quality focused with the right fit at the right time at the right cost. We've bringing a lot of sustainability aspect, especially now for the last decade. It's very important to kind of educate the customer, but as well as putting the pressure on manufacturing aspect to be able to bring product with more of minimizing waste, so not just recyclable products, but really focusing on the minimizing of the waste.
Yes.
And I do, I run a boutique business, meaning that I do only take one large client at a time. So I do work and happen to work last 8 years with clients in the sports licensing space. Fantastic new experience that absolutely opened up my horizons from going from a traditional fashion retail into licensing, and sports licensing specifically is a very unique niche. Understanding that customer and what they would need in order for them to be able to meet their needs with bringing a lifestyle product and with the focus of private label. So really heavy experience in private label for building for larger retailers, but as well as coaching and guiding entrepreneurs and smaller to mid-sized companies to scale, as well as start from ground zero.
Amazing. I love that. Like, you took your experience, like, I thought I could do it this way and I had to refigure it out. And now I'm going to teach you what I learned and what actually was successful for me. I mean, that's just so brilliant. And I think one thing that we really connected on, and one thing that I first want to jump into talking about, is almost exactly that. Like, even on your website, you like to emphasize how it's so much more important to be proactive instead of being reactive when you're building an apparel brand. So I love to talk about just how helpful it is to have a set process instead of like running around putting out fires all day, every day, which I think so many brands do.
You're absolutely right. And, I couldn't agree with you more. And when it comes to building an apparel brand, being a proactive is absolutely essential. Instead of constantly putting out fires, having a set process in place will allow us to anticipate challenges, right? And address them before that they come into the major issues. We tend to, especially as brands do scale, we tend to do a patchwork and we try to address what the immediate need is without hardly ever taking a step back and actually looking at your holistic process from end to end. Because any patch that you're putting in at any aspect or phase of your business is going to, at the end, affect either slow down or create delays of your overall process if there are automations are not put in place, if the systems are not implemented to make sure that there's a seamless transition from one to one. And a lot of times what we see is that a lot of the work is just gets redone in different stages because that process was never thought from end to end. It sets a foundation for everything that we do. I always say we run at 100 miles an hour and we overwhelm our teams.
Yeah.
We overwhelm our resources, but we don't really ever have the time to stop and take a step back.
Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I want to get into a little bit of my old corporate managerial brain and talk to you about promotions and raises. And I have had this on the books for a while now, planning to record a podcast episode about this. I wrote a blog post a little while back that gained a little bit of traction, a little bit of attention. And then I was just reading an article this morning. So it's just kind of funny that, I'm here getting ready to record this podcast and it had just come up for me this morning too. I was reading an article basically saying that Gen Z is out there looking for two key things in their job search. Number one being a decent salary, which totally understandable. And number two being growth and option for promotion when they get into that role. And so I wanted to have a little bit of a real talk today about what it takes to get promoted in a corporate role or kind of really at any job, so that I can give some advice that I've had throughout my long 20-year career. And I had a really successful career. I was promoted several times. I got lots of great raises, and I got myself to a point where I was in a leadership, business leader role as a woman, no less, in the outdoor industry in my corporate job. And so there was a lot that went with that. Just because an interviewer tells you that there is definitely room for growth and there are definitely promotions and raises to be had, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's just given out to everybody. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of things that will get you promoted and why I've seen some of this kind of go by the wayside as we've gotten into a more modern work from home, flexible schedule type of corporate industry, and how we can definitely maybe get back to some of what's really important. The couple of things that really helped me get promoted wasn't just about hard work. A lot of it was about my love of learning and how I was able to apply that to my job. And I mean by that I was always curious and I wasn't always fast to react when I didn't understand something or I didn't know how to do something. I was quick to ask questions because I wanted to learn how to do it properly. And I was quick to also test out my own skills as I was learning and growing. So instead of me kind of staying pegged in my little role, I was always the kind of person, like I was saying, to ask about what's going on in the big meetings. I wanted to know the big picture. I would also ask what kind of tasks I could be doing to get to the next level or to be invited to those meetings or to be part of the bigger picture. I was always really ambitious to be going toward what was next for me and how did the people around me need me to perform and behave to get there. And so in my very first year as an apparel technical design assistant at Abercrombie & Fitch, I think this is a really good lesson to kind of put out into the world. I didn't get the chance to touch a single pin, a single pair of scissors, a single marker, or a single piece of chalk to go up and do any fitting tasks for an entire year. As an assistant, it was my job to support my technical designer, who was my manager at the time. And it was my job, a couple of things to, number one, take notes during every single fitting. I would sit at the end of the table during every single fitting. And whenever my manager was up there running things, she was pinning garments, cutting garments, making sure things fit the fit model the way that they were supposed to. All I did was take notes. And I was obviously observing her quite closely because I was trying to learn from her methods, how she was doing it. What were the kind of conversations that they were having in the room? What questions was she asking? How was she going from top to bottom of the garment? How was she making sure that nothing got missed? How was she making sure that when she used those scissors, she wasn't cutting the fit model? How did she make sure that she wasn't pinning the fit model or injuring anybody during a fitting? A fitting can be a very dangerous place, trust me. And then also, how was she interacting with the other people in the room? When it was the merchandiser's time to talk about costing, how did she interact with that? How did she know how to suggest certain things about reducing the costing or making the costing better? When she was talking to design, how did she treat them and how did she value their opinion? It was also during this time where I got really, really good at Adobe Illustrator. It was my job after every fitting to go back and update all of the technical sketches and make sure that every single detail on every single piece of outerwear that we had just fit had a clear sketch for the factory to understand what exactly we wanted. And at the time, Abercrombie was doing some crazy construction stuff. We had different ways of making things look worn, even though they were brand new. And so having a technical sketch for all of those interior details, how that was being put together, how it was being sewn, was my job, so that as my manager wrote her comments and did the actual pattern revisions by hand, we did everything on paper back in those days with pencil and all of our different hip curves and our armhole curves. We did it all physically on paper like that. While she was doing that, I was helping her with the Illustrator sketches, making sure that the tech pack was cleaned up and accurate. Now, this was not a glamorous job. Doing all of that work felt really tedious on certain days. And if I had been the type of person who would have really wanted to jump ahead in my career quickly, I probably would have complained about that a lot. But my willingness to be open to that learning stage and my willingness to be friendly and kind about it and accept that that was my key role on the team. I mean, without me taking notes, my manager wouldn't have been able to write good comments when she got back to her desk. And I understood that. And so we would actually work through the best way for me to write my notes on the piece of paper so that when she got back to her desk, she could make sure that her comments were concise and written as quickly as possible. And so that was a skill in and of itself that I needed to learn. And ultimately, over time, it also really helped me understand how to write my own comments when I got to that level of my career. So by slowing things down and accepting that there is a slow process and there is a way to build upon certain tasks, even though they don't seem glamorous, and even though they don't seem like the thing that you want to do, it can be really important to accept that and to be kind and to be friendly while you're in those scenarios and not be demanding and not be asking for continuous additional extra work that you're maybe not ready for. If you like this episode, I encourage you to please leave us a review. We would appreciate it very much. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We are looking to grow our YouTube channel this year, and we invite you to become a member of our community. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, You can reach out to Jeremy at Box7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.